What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the King's Journal. Look, this format is going to be a little bit differently. A little bit different. I'm going to be doing things a touch differently than what you are used to for this. Right now, I'm doing some work, but I'm also recording this podcast because done is better than perfect because perfect never gets done. And one thing that I realized is that I was putting so much emphasis, so much effort into the production and into it that I stopped really enjoying doing this thing. And I believe that this is a gift. This is a gift that I can do this, and this is a gift that I have to do this, and I loved doing it. And so, but I was just putting so much minutia into it that and then I was thinking of it so much because I was learning so much. So I was thinking so much about what I was doing and what I needed to do to, reach a certain audience, to grow it at a certain rate, or to develop a YouTube channel and all this other stuff. Because I know, you know, in my head and practically, what is needed to grow a YouTube channel. And so as I was learning that and then doing it, I could see it. I could see the results with who I was working with to build up theirs. But then I was thinking of, okay, well, shoot, I might as well do that for my own. And so that caused me to stop doing this podcast for a moment because I'm like, well, there's a lot of work that needs to go into that. So until I'm ready to do a bunch of work to do that, then I might as well just, not be doing the podcast because, I got to set up and do this stuff and do this and this. But for some reason, in that whole process of doing that, I forgot I didn't start this podcast because I'm just trying to reach a gazillion people and make money from it. The reason that I started this podcast was one, is primarily like a journal. The goal is documentation. I'm documenting these different points in life. So if you're similar to me, then you are probably a young adult and you're an entrepreneur, and most of all, you're a Christian. And so you're navigating through life right now, trying to really understand the balance between being having a strong faith, having a strong purpose, and going after things, having a strong ambition to really, really squeeze the most out of life possible. Every single day, trying to get the most out of it. And in that, you run into some things because there's, sometimes you know what to do, but you don't know what to do. You're doing things and you're learning, but you're not seeing certain things, and you might not be seeing the results, or you I don't know, you just get distracted. For me, I can speak for myself. You might get distracted because you're doing this, you're doing this, or you try this, because you're trying to make sure that you're doing the right thing because I'm at this point in my life, I'm 25 years old, so I'm like, I want to focus on the right thing so that I can go all in on this right thing and do it for the next decade, because I know after this next decade, by 35, I'm going to be at the top of this thing. So I'm going to be a monster at this. I mean, and far before that, I'm going to be a monster at it. But especially in this next decade, if I completely focus my energy and effort into this thing, it's going to be absolutely amazing. But the issue is, okay, what? What are you going to focus on? What's worth that time? What are you really going to dive deep into? And should you? And it's like, is this what God wants you to do? Is this a purpose? Is this purposeful for you? X, Y, and Z, etc., 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 etc. And so it's an interesting point. But what I wanted to talk about a little bit today, while I'm making this thing here, is seasons. So not too long ago, there was a men's meeting that I was at. Actually, time has just been weird, so I can't even really say not too long ago. I don't even know. I really don't even remember when it was. Like a lot of times, it's funny. People will be like, "Well, I'll have a thought about something that happened," and I'll be like, "I think it was like last week or something," and then you really look at it, and it was like literally a month or 2 months ago or 3 months ago that thing happened. But it's like time is just going. So every day, I'm trying to make every single day count, and then in that, you just kind of lose track of when certain things happen. But anyways, there was a men's meeting, and in this men's meeting, we discussed a concept called seasons. Shout out to Freedom in Christ Ministry, good old Pastor Rodney Kemp doing his thing over there. In this men's meeting, they were talking about seasons. We were going through like this video series and talking about seasons in a man's life. And so in this this video series, pretty much the guys were telling us that there are the first season of life is your identity, is you trying to a person has to figure out who they are. Like everybody's trying to find themselves. Everybody's trying to figure out, okay, who am I? Where do I come from? Where am I going? And really understand them in the first season of life. And then the next season after that is the learning and the growth phase season. So that season you are developing you've already identified who you are. Now you're trying to identify what you can do. You're trying to really work on what you can do. Like you know who you are, you know to a certain extent what you might be capable of, but then in that next phase you're deciding on, okay, this is what I'm learning this thing, I'm growing in this thing, I'm developing my skills. I think the saying goes, I'm cutting my teeth in this thing until the next phase, the next season. And I mean, but this is not just limited to like entrepreneurship. This is not just limited to in this learning and growth. It's everything. You are learning how to maintain a relationship. You are learning definitely where you want to spend your energy and your time when it comes to building a career or building up a skill or building up a business or an industry. You're learning that thing and you're growing in it. Or you decided that you wanted to do video, so you're learning. And then also you're learning how to be more productive. You're also learning like what kind of people you actually like to hang around. Who's good to hang around for? Who do you like to hang around, one, but who's also going to be beneficial to your life too? Are these people that you're hanging around people that are going to get you to where you're trying to go? Are you even trying to go anywhere? You're learning all this stuff. So you've identified you. I know who I am. I know where I come from, and I know to a certain extent what my potential could be. But in this learning phase, I'm learning now with the materials that I have, the foundation that I have. I'm going deeper into what I believe, into what I think I know. The phase after that is the influence phase. So the influence phase is when you've done the learning, you've done the growing. You're still growing, obviously. You're still growing, but you are now, you ain't at the beginning of that learning. You know some stuff. Like you are at a point where you can say, I know some stuff, not just I read it. I know some stuff because I've done some stuff, and I've got all of these receipts. You can check the scores, you can check the data. I've been working at this thing. I've been building up for all of the last season. I'm over here killing it now. And so then you're at that point where you got some stuff to show. You got some, and then at this point also in this influence phase, like now there's the people who are learning. You're showing them. You might be helping them out, but you're also the top dog competing with other top dogs in that area. So people are trying to come after you because now you're not at the beginning of this thing. So it doesn't take so much for you to get something going. It doesn't take so much for you to develop because you know what you want to do, you know what you're good at doing, and you know what works well for you because you've learned that, you've done it, and you've been developing in it for X amount of time in the last season. Next phase after that is the sage season. It's the one. It's the one where, okay, you did all the stuff that you was trying to do. The influence phase, you became the big shot. Things went well. Now you're on the other side of it, where it's like my focus now is just doing things in a new way, trying to see life through a different lens that doesn't involve so much of me, involve so much of my energy, and how can I more so contribute from my experience to those who might be in that learning, who might be in that influence, who might be in that identity phase. And I'm taking my foot off of the gas because it's time for the young cats to go at it. That's the sage. That's like 60, 65 up. So the reason I'm talking about these seasons is because I'm in a very interesting season. So and I know there's a lot of people out there who was in a season similar to, or in the same season that I'm in. Because I teach a class. I've talked about this before, but I teach a film class, and it's a very small film class, but I take it very seriously. And so I was talking to my students about this, like when we were wrapping up the year. A little bit. We were talking a little bit about seasons, and one of them. Here, let me move this mic over here. One of them. We identified that they kind of was transitioning from that identity phase to the what's it called? To the learning and growth phase. And we could identify that because this person, based on the questions that I gave, I could tell this person knew. She knows who she is. And she knows where she comes from. She knows what she has decided what she wants to believe. And that's just what it is. She's not closed-minded, but she's not questioning a bunch of stuff. One point that I made, because this is a high schooler, and I gave her some props on this, is she, got through this whole identity phase. And a lot of people at her age, this high school age, she just graduated, she's like 18. A lot of people in that phase who are around her age are so busy not understand. Well, you don't really need to understand, but there's certain things that have to be done before you move on. And so if you don't identify who you are, it's hard to pick the right career. It's hard to pick the right college. It's hard to even know if you should go to college. And it's also extremely difficult to pick the right person to be with if you don't know who you are. And she wasn't chasing boys. She wasn't out trying to just be in a relationship just to be in a relationship because, other people in her age group were in a relationship and, they were doing all this and stuff and they were going and hanging out and going to the movies and all that other whatever. She wasn't focused on that. And I was like, I think that's really cool that's in the questions that I gave her, because I gave her a whole little questionnaire to fill out. She filled it out, and she didn't even put that on there. Like, that was not even her chief concern. Her chief concern was, what was she doing with her career, with her life? Like, she has two things that she wanted to do. Two things that she feels like if she goes down this path and she becomes successful in these things, her life will be amazing. And that's what she was focused on. Like that's all she was concerned about on this document. She was like, I want to be in the film industry and I want to be in the music industry. I want to be the person who can go direct a movie and then be on tour. That's it. And so I've got a YouTube channel where I show all of my skills when it comes to music. And I'm in your film class because I want to learn about this other side. And I'm like, that is absolutely amazing. Side note, how many people do you know who, if we can go back to our high school days, how many people do you know were in a relationship with somebody and they were clearly not fit to be in that relationship with that other person? Like, I mean, it was night and it was blatant that those two people should not be together. How many know that? How many can pick a few of those? And I know I can. And the thing about it was, the reason that those two people shouldn't have been together is because there was probably one of them or both of them in this relationship not knowing who they were. And so they paired with somebody not knowing the purpose of a relationship and not knowing who they are and their role in the relationship. So we got two lost people going in a random direction because they don't know where they want to go or where they should go, but they're together, trying to go together somewhere, trying to figure out who they are, and it's just a mess. It's just a flat out, straight up mess. It's like two people, say you're in a car with somebody, so say you're dating somebody, right? And you're in the car and you guys are both hungry and you're like, all right, I'm hungry, you're hungry. Let's go eat. And you're like, okay, so what do you want to eat? And the other person's like, I don't know, what do you want to eat? And then you're like, well, I don't know, what do you want to eat? And they're like, well, I don't know, where do you want to eat? And then the other person's like, okay, and then you guys are still driving down the road and you guys are both just not knowing what to eat. And so eventually you drive down the road, you might see somewhere and you're like, you want to eat that? They're like, nah, I don't really have a taste for that. You keep going. And then you see it somewhere else and you're like, you want to eat that? I don't know. Maybe we could go there. What do you think? You know, actually, let's look at their menu online. Okay, so we stop. We pull over, pull up the menu online. Okay, Coop. You know what? I don't want to eat anything from there either. So you keep driving. So these two people who have no idea what they actually desire and and what will be good for them in that moment, they're just going. They're on a road to nowhere because they don't know anything about their self. So neither of them have a direction. So there's no possible way they can productively be moving forward to a specific and predetermined destination because they never determined one and they don't have the fundamental materials needed to get somewhere intentionally. Say these two people get a baby. They go make a baby. And now you got two people, and oftentimes in this situation, they're like, well, we might as well stay together. We should try to figure this out because we got a child now. And then they go try to figure it out. And next thing you know, there's a baby and the relationship doesn't work out and it's terrible. It becomes pretty much torture to stay in the relationship because eventually over time, one of them most likely starts to figure out who they are and what they want and what they don't want. And then they realize, oh, wait a minute, you? I don't want you. You do not fit this picture. And so with that understanding, the relationship becomes real tough. Like, I don't know about you. Well, I definitely don't like you. And the other person's like, if they haven't figured it out yet, they're like, yo, what's up? I mean, you don't like doing this anymore? You don't want to go here anymore? You don't like, coming over here and doing this kind of thing anymore? It's like, no, that's not who I am. What do you mean that's not who you are? Back in the day, we used to do this all the time. Like, well, I that's just not me. Oh, okay. Well, I guess we'll just figure it out. And then they don't. Unfortunately, for the child. But yeah, that's the first phase. And so Me, the next phase, that identity phase. I mean, for anybody who's in that phase, I would say you definitely, if you don't know where you're from, what you're made of, and where you're going, then you won't know who you are. So if I'm in that phase, if I feel like those pieces have always been missing for me, I would go deep in figuring that out. Some people now, if you're listening to this, you're probably a Christian. But if you're listening to this and you're not a Christian, I would identify like, where are you from? Who are my parents? What fabric, what genetic makeup do I come from? And what kind of person am I? Like you've probably done a certain amount of things by this point in your life to identify what you don't like, what you do like, and to know who your parents are, what kind of people they are, and what you are interested in doing, and materials, what raw material from them that you champion in your own life. Understand that. Understand that this makes up who you are. And then it's like, okay, with these things, knowing what I'm good at, who I am as a person, my kind of personality, am I the one who's outgoing? Am I the one who's more of an introvert? Am I the one who can switch in between the two, but I lean more on this way? Take all that. And then understand, then try to figure out, okay, I have an idea. I am, especially, and you can figure this out by looking at other people as well, like understanding who you're not. It's actually sometimes even faster to figure out who you are by figuring out who you're not. It's like, I ain't no punk. I ain't that dude over there. That person that I just heard about, I don't do that. Or these people online who talking crazy about doing all this other stuff, being all these kind of different ways and doing this stuff, that's not who I am. I am this way. I'm a man. I'm a man of God. I believe this thing, and this is the kind of life that I want to live because these are the principles that I stand on. That's who you are. But where are you going? Now that's the question. That's the question. Because when you understand where you're going, to understand where you're going takes some time. And what I mean by that, I'm not saying like, okay, what do you want to be when you grow up, and then having a full detailed outline of, okay, I'm going to be exactly at this point, and this is exactly, what it's going to look like, what I'm going to be doing, and how I'm going to get there. No. What I mean by that, like where you're going, is having a base level understanding of what you actually want out of life, right? Because it's one thing to mosey through life just doing the things that are within arm's reach of you because they make sense at the moment, and it's another thing to do something because you have determined in your own mind that this is going to help me to get to the life that I want to live down the road and in the present. And understanding that, having that idea, having that in your head, helps you to more intentionally take steps in that direction in life. So figuring those things out, you get past the identity phase. The next phase right here is the phase that I'm in, and the one that I want to kind of talk about today a little bit. And I think I've already talked for a good amount of time, but I won't hold you guys for too long on this. But man, so if you're an entrepreneur and you're in this phase, or you're below, you're middle, you're like a young adult, right? And you're a Christian, you're an entrepreneur, or you're just you're out, you have a career and you're building it, you're at like the beginning of it. This is a very interesting phase to be in, and this is a very interesting time. of your life and my life. And I say this because I think this is the time where, okay, before you had to figure out you had to figure out what kind of person you are, and what you will accept and won't accept out of life, and then have an idea of where you might want to go based on the things that you've done, the things you've experienced, and who you are. This phase is, okay, I've identified a few things, but now you have to dive a bit deeper, much deeper, into actually developing in those areas that you've decided, because they map out to, from what you know, they map out to where you want to go. And it's the tricky part, because that first phase is crucially important, but this phase right here pretty much sets up the rest of your life. So focusing on the wrong thing, you can always pivot. Yes, you can always pivot, but pivoting too many times, 1000% releases you from the opportunity to have a sort of compound interest in life. What I mean by that is, there's the people who went to college. You probably know about somebody who did this, or you probably are this person who went to college, and all 4 years they had a different major. First year they were learning psychology, the next year they were in journalism, the year after that they were in communication, and they rounded it off by being in biology. Didn't make any sense at all. And then they graduated with a degree, a meaningless degree, because they have it, and so they can go to get a job saying that they have a degree, but the point of getting an education is to then be educated. And so you spent 4 years learning 4 different things, but you have not built up any level of mastery in any of them because you weren't in it long enough. Like, you just flat out you weren't able to go deep enough in it because you weren't in it long enough to do it. And so some people, I've noticed, they go through life like that. One thing that my dad was telling me about, he told me about a long time ago, is the people that you see in high school, you got to understand that a lot of them will be the same person as when they are a young adult, when they are middle age, and when they are a senior. They're going to be the same way. Like, those people who was going out and getting it done, those people who are high achievers, and those people who were really lazy, or those people who always avoided work. Understand that most likely a lot of those people will be the same way at every other stage of their life moving forward. I've seen that. Now, going back, if you're the person who decides that you're going to do one thing, and then two years later you decide to do something else, 2 years later you decide to do something else, 2 years later you decide to do something else, 2 years later you decide to do something else, understand that, especially if those doing something else wasn't intentional, like stacking up skills, if those things are completely unrelated and don't map out and don't work together congruently, like they don't work together in a good way, then you will effectively have done nothing. you will have taken a little bit of progress to get almost nowhere after a decade of movement. And trust me, you will have gone through hard times. You will have gone through all sorts of ups and downs, and you will have had to make decisions just to make it work because you haven't become an expert or a master in anything. Therefore, after you get to the age of 32, you're like, okay, what did I do for the last 10 years? What did I do in my 20s? And you might not have even been the person who was out partying, hanging out, drinking, whatever. But there are those people too. There are those people who just decided that, during my learning and growth phase, I'm going to learn how to drink as much as possible and do the craziest things that I possibly can without getting arrested and having enough to pay my rent. Some people's whole 20 sums age, a whole 20 some decade is all about how can I do as little as possible, have as much fun as possible, and not get arrested. And so by the time they get to their 30s, they have become an expert at this thing, almost. But then at some point, I believe that a person starts to think, now what? Because eventually stuff get old. And it's a blessing to think, now what? Because I guess there are that group of people that stay in that mode and they just try to do as little as possible for their whole life. But if you do have that moment where you're like, okay, so this is what I've done, it really hasn't mapped out to anything that great, and I'm kind of disappointed with where I am, so what now? And it's a good question. It's a really good question. But going back again, talking about the person who is in this 20s phase, and they're going, because I understand that, like, because we are learning and growing, this is the safest place. This is the safest place to try something, go in on it for a year, 2 years, and then decide that, you know what, I'm going to do something else because this isn't what I wanted. This is the time to do that. Like, you can go be an entrepreneur. You can go out and be completely all in on entrepreneurship and then decide, nope, actually, that's way too much work. That's way too much responsibility. That's way too much risk. And I'd rather go work somewhere and then do some stuff on the side. That is a very, man, I applaud the person. I applaud the person who has the guts, the courage to do that specific thing and be comfortable with their self doing it. Because I think the issue with a lot of people, and I have to fight this all the time, the issue is we do something and we do it for so long and we become wrapped up in our identity in that. We wrap our identity up in that, and then our friend group, our family, and everyone around us knows us as this thing. So then when we decide to pivot, it looks like, and it can feel like sometimes, well, I failed. So I failed if I go do this other thing. So I guess I might as well just keep going in the way that I've been going, because, I don't want to feel like a failure, and I don't want a bunch of questions asking me, what about when I was doing this other thing? And I'm known as this person, and I've got a bit of experience and skill in this area, so I might as well just keep on doing it. I'm telling you right now, if you are this person, if you've had these thoughts, stop now. Don't do it. Don't keep moving. If it wasn't for you, if you don't like it, if you hate it, don't keep doing it. You are in a position where you can pivot. And the pivot will be the best decision that you could make if you are truly having those thoughts where you don't like where you're going, you don't like what it's mapping out to, you don't like the people that you are around, but you have this experience in this area because you've been doing it for so long. So you feel like you should just keep going. And there are other things that you are interested in, but you'd have to start from the ground to get good at it, to develop in those areas. So you think it might be a good idea to just stay the course. Don't stay the course. Forget that stupid course. Throw that course in the trash, burn it. Well, Martell, what about you just saying there's people who switch paths every 2 seconds and then they end up nowhere? Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's a huge difference between I've identified who I am and what I want my life to look like, and I'm taking intentional steps to go in that direction. And say I'm deciding to take one path to get there, and then I decide after I've developed myself in this area for a little bit of time, and I can see what this life maps out to, and I don't like it. It's not going to bring me joy to be in that influence phase doing this, because the people that I'm around and the people that I'll be around, this is not the life that and the things that I have to do, this isn't the life that I want to live. It makes sense to pivot. But understand that your pivot is different from the other person's pivot because you did it intentionally. So there's a lot of value that comes from going in, learning, experiencing, understanding, and then pivoting. Don't miss out on all of the wisdom, all of the knowledge, all of the connections, all of the growth that had to happen in that phase that you went, that first part of learning before you decided that it wasn't for you. There was a lot in that. There's a lot of value that comes from that. And you can use a lot of a lot of that mentality and a lot of those, maybe it's not the direct skill, but all the mental work, all of the relationship work, all of the personal development and growth that had to happen, you can use that to be more effective in the next area and potentially move faster in understanding the next thing because you've already gone through one thing. Now, if you are on the other side where, okay, I'm a photographer today, and because so-and-so guru online told me that photographers are making bank, and I'm a drop shipping Spotify store seller next year. And then after that, I'm going to do credit repair. And then after that, I'm going to do tax preparation. And then after that, I'm going to be a YouTuber. And you're doing these things because it just sounds like a good idea, because you heard one thing online, or you heard someone say or someone just told you, hey, you should do this because you're good at this thing. And so you just did it. And so all of these pieces are disjointed. They don't really map out to anything. I cannot say that you are in the same line, in the same lane as that other person, because you never took the time to go deep. And in that going deep on something, you have to develop, you have to learn, you have to grow. And so there's growth that happens regardless. When you go deep, when you decide that this is where I'm putting my flag. There's a lot that goes into that, and there's a lot that has to happen in that. And so that pivot, look, don't think that the pivot means that you have to go somewhere else and start over again. No. You're deciding that it's almost like, instead of, if we're thinking of it in terms of a mountain, you climbed up this mountain, you pointed your flag, you looked around, you said, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like where I am, I don't like the view here, and so I need to go somewhere else. And over there, it looks like that's a path that I could go down, and it might be better for me. So I think I'm gonna give it a try. I'm gonna give it a shot. Understand that when you go down that next path, you're not going on foot, walking. It's more like you've got a bunch of all of the tools that you had to gather in your backpack and on your tool belt to climb up this mountain, because you started on the mountain, you had nothing, you were naked, and it was just you. And so you were climbing, you had to put your hands on the rocks and try to climb up this thing. And at a certain point, you got a shirt, certain point, you got some pants, certain point, you got this axe to start putting yourself up even higher. You got up at another point, you got the Batman like grapple gun where you could shoot it, and then it was gonna zip line you up even faster. And then you got to the top and realized it wasn't a place that you wanted to be at, So, but understand that all those tools, you still got them. So when you move on this different path, yes, you do have to learn. There's certain things that you're gonna have to learn from the ground. There's certain things that are gonna have to happen from scratch, but you still got that grapple gun. You still got clothes on. So now you're moving, and you can move through the weeds even faster. You can get up this next mountain even faster because it's like, okay, I've got all this stuff, I got all these tools, this equipment, and so when I get to this one, I can get to the point where I know faster, much faster. And if you decide to stay on that path, your mountain, you can climb a higher mountain. You can climb that higher mountain and continue to build, or you can decide that this mountain, that other mountain, isn't for you. Look, I don't know how many times it's gonna take, but I just hope that you get to yours. But those two are different. One is unintentional. One person was doing one thing and they never gained the tools because they never decided to climb the mountain. They decided that they were going to coast. They were going to do a little bit of it. They were going to take a step up the mountain. And then they were like, oh, well, that mountain looks cooler, so let me run over there. And they ran over to that one, and they took a step up that one. They said, oh, well, that mountain over there looks cool, so I'm going to run over there too. And they took a step up that mountain. So that person never gained those tools. They never got the Batman grapple gun. They never got the clothes on because they always started and stopped and moved. Started, stopped, and moved. Started, stopped, and moved. So y'all are not in the same boat. I think that is the 20s waster. Actually that's the 20s 30s waster. Or one of. And so I've been thinking about this a lot because, man, I got to the mountain and I could see, I'm looking around and I'm that person who's like, I don't like this. It was fun getting up here. It was great getting up here. But I don't think it makes sense for me to go further. Like, I haven't gotten to the top, meaning like there's nowhere else to go, but I've gotten high enough on this mountain to see that further up is not where I want to go. I don't want to move any farther up this mountain. This is not the one for me. And just to give you even more clarity on it, just make it more real, this is what happened with like doing freelance video. Man, I could tell you, and this is not bragging, this is not trying to boast or anything, but I am really good at it. Okay? I'm really good at it. And I mean, if anybody has any questions about it, you can check the website. But I'm really good at this thing. And I know this. I understand it. And I know that I can do some serious stuff in this. And I know how to climb this mountain. I know it. I know how I can get further up this bad boy. But like I said, I got to a point where I'm like, ooh, now I have to decide, is this a mountain that I actually care to climb up any further? And when I look around, it's not. It's not. But now the challenge is, okay, if not this mountain, then what? Which mountain? If I'm not going to move further here, if I don't want to move further here, I can. If I don't want to, then what am I going to do? Because what I won't do is just continue to move up for the rest of my life and hate my days, because you get to a point where you're just doing it because it creates an income, and you hate everything that you do. Like the work that you do isn't something that you're excited about. So for me, it's hard to really put real energy, real effort into something that I have no interest in doing. Some people, you've heard of like entrepreneurs, you've heard of different people who are like exceptional at just doing stuff that they hate for a long time. Actually, I don't believe that. I really don't believe that. I take that back. I don't think anybody who's made it to any significant level of success in anything, significant level of success, I don't think you could possibly do it without having a certain level of interest in it. Like, you might not like everything about it, but you have to have a good amount to do the work necessary to truly be successful in an area. Like, to truly get to a spot above the rest, to truly stand out. Otherwise, I mean, you could be one of the pack and you could hate it. You could do that. That's easy. I mean, the one thing that makes me think of is, like, in track, there was the people who decided to run track just because it was available and their friends were running it, or their friends were in track, so they decided to just be on the track team. So they went through practice, they did everything cool, they went to the track meets, it was fun, but they don't have the same drive, they don't have the same hunger, they don't have the same desire to win a meet. They're just doing it. They're just, trying to improve their time a little bit, whatever. And they don't hate it, but they're not trying to go to the state championship. They're not trying to, do all this other stuff, but they're just glad to be a part of the team, which is cool. But it would be to tell them to stay 2 extra hours after practice and to show up to practice an hour earlier would be too much for that person. To say, all right, I know it's Saturday, but we about to do a morning workout, that'd be too much for them. To say, all right, instead of on the summer going and hanging out, we're gonna have a whole nother season of track after your other season so that you can train and get ready for the next season. That's too much. So it takes to willingly and happily accept the extra work. I gotta be that person who, I'm doing these extra workouts. I'm showing up early. I'm staying late, and I'm doing my summer workouts because, first off, homie is not going to beat me next year. And second off, I see myself at the top of that podium. I just don't have the picture yet. In my mind, I'm at the top of that dang podium. But just give it some time and y'all gonna see it too. That's a different mentality. That's a different energy. So I say that to say, me right now, just giving a real life update, I'm at that point where I gotta really decide what's next for Martell. What's this next level of mastery? Because, and one thing that I'm keeping in mind for anybody who might be in the same position, I'm gonna pick something that, since I did go deep, I do have my Batman grapple gun. I got my clothes on. I got my backpack. I got my tool belt. So I understand this stuff, but I don't want to stop again. I don't want to pivot again. So I'm being very intentional, and the hard part is I'm being very patient in talking to God about this, really looking at different options, really trying to see, okay, where could this go before I go all in on the next thing, because I do not want to stop again. Because it's not too late to pivot. Look, if you're, dude, whoever you are, if you said that you can relate to any of what I just said, it's not too late. Stop thinking that. Now, you don't even know if you'll be alive today, or you don't know if you're going to be alive for at the end of this day. You don't know if you're going to be alive tomorrow. But Lord willing, you're going to be alive. And if you are, it's better to be intentional about going somewhere than to not know, not spend the time to think about, and just haphazardly move and end up somewhere that you don't want to be. Keep moving. You'll figure it out. I'm gonna figure it out, and you'll see. But I'm gonna figure it out. I might start something, but I'm gonna be a lot quicker at stopping because I've got the experience now. I've got my binoculars as well, so I can see up the mountain a little bit better to see where it's going, so that I can know if this is for me or not. But it's not too late. You're not out of time. You haven't wasted time. All the things that you did to get to this point, you've developed a certain level of mastery. Understand that there are things in your tool belt that are not in other people's tool belt. And understand that the things that are in your tool belt will help you to move faster in whatever you do next. So the time that was spent building up what you built is not wasted time. And you are not a disappointment. You are not a failure because you've switched directions. No, not at all. Not even a little bit. Understand that you can have, you have experience, you have gifts, you have abilities, you have skills that you've built up, and those things that you've built up, that focus, that deep work that was needed is valuable. So don't even entertain the thought that you wasted any time. Don't even entertain it. Not even for a second. And don't let anybody make you feel like you've wasted time. Don't let anybody make you feel like, oh man, I wish you were doing this more, or I wish you would do that again. Don't let anybody even talk to you in that way. Don't even let that cross your mind. That is a conversation that is unfruitful. That is a conversation that is not worth your time. You need the freedom and the flexibility to pivot. And if that person is so stuck on who you were, then they cannot be with you for where you're going. Let that sink in. Some people are just not going to be able to go with you. Sorry. Not. But just know that you got to go all in. Take that time. Be patient. And I know that's the hard thing, man. Because if you are a mover and shaker, if you've been moving and you've been grinding and you've been figuring it out and you got to a certain point and you're like, man, this isn't where I want to be. I got to pivot. It's kind of, it would be easy to just jump into the next thing. But it would be unwise to jump into the next thing without, the Bible talks about knowing the cost before you chart the course. It'd be unwise to not take into account everything that happened in the last thing and what made you dissatisfied with it. Not take into account all those things and then move into the next thing haphazardly or with haste and then end up in the same situation again. Take some time to think about it. Get your stability. Get your stability so that you can get into a place where you can think, where you can plan, where you can plot, where you can research, where you can go talk to people who have gotten to a certain point in that next thing that you're thinking about. And then once you figure it out, and this isn't the hard part, this isn't the part that I'm sure you have any issue with. Once you figure it out, go all in like you have never gone in before. Because my theory at this point is that it's going to take you whatever the time it took to get to the point that you got to where you decided it was time to pivot. It's going to take you half or less of the time to get to the same level in this next area because you have the tools that you now have. So I urge you to be patient, to be diligent in your research, and to go all in. And man, ignore the noise. Shut it down. Even if it's in your own head. You have not wasted time. You did not waste your 20s. You are right where you need to be to do what you need to do next. Chances are, no, scripture says all things work together for the good of those that love God. So, everything that you did to this point was necessary. Uh-oh, mic drop. Because you needed it to be successful and to be the person that you need to be to achieve what you need to achieve in this next area. Make sure that your future is bigger than your past, and don't hang on the successes that you've had before, because now it's time to do things bigger. It's time to do things better. It's time to take that next step and being who God created you to be and the legacy that He created you to build. Thank you for joining this episode of wrong one. Thank you for joining this episode of A King's Journal. I did not expect to be talking for an hour, but it's good to be back. Thank you. Talk to y'all later. Have a fantastic, phenomenal, and amazing day. And if you got to this point, awesome. Have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to y'all soon. Peace.